There comes a moment when your kindness dies. Not your heart, your weakness. You feel it before you understand it. A quiet shift, a tightening in your chest when someone starts unloading their chaos onto you again. A subtle exhaustion when the same patterns repeat, the same apologies, the same emotional debts. For years, you told yourself this was your gift. Your ability to feel deeply, to sense what others hide, to carry what others drop. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You weren't just feeling, you were absorbing. And absorption without limits is self-destruction. You became the emotional sponge in every room, the stabilizer, the fixer, the one who understands. You translated other people's silence. You excused their behavior. You rationalized their neglect. You overextended yourself and called it compassion. But compassion without boundaries is not virtue. It's self-abandonment. That's the first shock. The second, part of you liked being the strong one, the needed one, the emotionally mature one. It gave you identity. It made you valuable. If people depended on you, they wouldn't leave you. If you solved their pain, you'd secure your place. That wasn't empathy. There was fear wearing empathy's mask. You feared being ordinary. You feared being ignored. You feared being alone with your own unmet needs. So you kept giving, even when your body was tired. Even when your intuition whispered, this is too much. Even when resentment quietly started building under your politeness. You smiled through disrespect. You tolerated emotional inconsistency. You carried conversations that should have died naturally. And each time you did, you chipped away at yourself. The breaking point isn't loud. It doesn't explode. It arrives as clarity, a cold, undeniable awareness that your exhaustion is self-inflicted. Not because you are weak, but because you refuse to protect yourself. That realization burns. You see how often you betrayed your own boundaries to avoid disappointing someone. How quickly you silenced your anger to maintain harmony. How often you said, I understand, when what you meant was, this hurts. And something inside you refuses to continue. This is where the final stage begins. Not when you stop caring, but when you stop overcaring. Not when you shut down emotionally, but when you stop letting your empathy operate without discipline. You finally admit a brutal truth. Not everyone deserves access to your depth. You stop romanticizing your suffering as proof of love. You stop glorifying emotional endurance as strength. You recognize that constantly being the bigger person is not growth. Sometimes it's avoidance. Avoidance of confrontation. Avoidance of rejection. Avoidance of choosing yourself. The breaking point is the death of that avoidance. You decide your nervous system matters. Your time matters. Your emotional energy is not public property. And once that decision is made internally, even before anyone else sees it, you have crossed a line. You are no longer the empath who bleeds quietly. You are becoming something else, something controlled, something aware, something that cannot be drained the same way again. At this stage, something uncomfortable happens. You stop needing to be understood. For most of your life, you survived on validation, not applause, not attention, just subtle approval, a nod, a you are such a good person, a reminder that your overgiving was seen. You built your identity around being the safe one, the patient one, the emotionally intelligent one, and every time someone praised that version of you, it reinforced the cycle. But here's the brutal truth. If your peace depends on being seen as good, you are not free. You are performing, and performance is exhausting. The death of approval begins when you realize how much of your behavior was shaped by fear of being misunderstood. You explained yourself endlessly. You softened your tone. You adjusted your standards. You tolerated half-effort because calling it out might make you difficult. You weren't maintaining harmony. You were managing perception. That ends here. Unstoppable empaths understand something most people never do. Needing everyone to understand you is a subtle form of control. You want to control how they see you. You want to control the narrative. You want to avoid being the villain in someone else's story. But here's the shocking realization. Sometimes growth requires you to become the villain in someone else's version of events, and you survive it. You stop defending your boundaries to people committed to misunderstanding them. You stop writing emotional essays to explain why you're hurt. You stop negotiating your standards just to avoid tension. because tension is no longer your enemy. Self-betrayal is another harsh truth. Some people preferred you exhausted. They liked you when you were overavailable, when you answered instantly, when you absorbed their chaos without complaint, when you made space for them but never demanded the same in return. When you change that dynamic, they call you cold, distant, different. They're right. You are different. You are no longer operating from guilt. The death of approval means you accept that not everyone will clap for your evolution. Some will resist it. Some will test it. Some will try to provoke the old version of you back into existence. But you don't react. You observe. You notice how quickly people reveal themselves when access to your energy is limited. You see who respects your no. You see who only valued your yes. And instead of chasing, you detach. That's the shift. You are no longer trying to be chosen by everyone. You are choosing yourself first, silently, firmly, without apology. You don't need the room to agree with you. You don't need the relationship to validate you. You don't need constant reassurance that you are good, because you finally understand something powerful. Your worth was never in your usefulness. And once you stop seeking approval to confirm your value, you become emotionally unhookable. That's when the empath becomes unstoppable. This is where most people misunderstand you. They think you've changed because you don't react the same way anymore. They think you've hardened because you're no longer instantly available. They think you've lost your softness because you no longer bleed for everyone. They're wrong. You didn't lose your depth. You gained control over it. Before, every emotion in the room felt like your responsibility. If someone was uncomfortable, you felt it. If someone was distant, you analyzed it. If someone was in pain, you carried it. You confused emotional awareness with emotional obligation. That confusion drained you for years. Here's the hard truth. Just because you can feel something doesn't mean you are required to fix it. Read that carefully. Your nervous system is not public property. Your empathy is not a community resource. You are not an emotional emergency service for people who refuse to grow. The unstoppable stage begins when you separate compassion from responsibility. You can understand someone without excusing them. You can love someone without tolerating their chaos. You can care without collapsing. That's emotional maturity. And here's another uncomfortable realization. Some of the intensity you called connection was actually trauma recognition. You bonded over wounds, over shared pain, over emotional volatility. It felt deep because it was dramatic. It felt meaningful because it was consuming. But depth without stability is not intimacy. It's addiction. Now, you don't chase intensity. You look for consistency. You don't romanticize emotional roller coasters. You value calm. That shift changes everything. You stop overanalyzing delayed replies. You stop personalizing other people's moods. You stop assuming silence equals rejection. Why a D? Because you are no longer outsourcing your sense of safety. The old version of you needed reassurance to feel secure. The new version builds security internally. You trust your perception. If something feels off, you don't gaslight yourself. If someone crosses a boundary, you don't debate it for weeks. In your head, quietly, decisively. Emotional detachment at this stage is not numbness, it's filtration. You choose what enters your system. You choose who gets access to your vulnerability. You choose which conversations deserve your energy. And you no longer feel guilty for that choice. That's the key difference. Before, boundaries came with anxiety, now they come with clarity. You realize that protecting your peace doesn't make you selfish, it makes you stable. And stability is what allows your empathy to become powerful. Instead of destructive, you still feel deeply. But now you feel on purpose. You are no longer drowning in everyone else's emotions. You are standing in your own. This is the stage where everything flips. For most of your life, your empathy controlled you. Now, you control it. Before, you reacted instantly. A shift in tone, a slight withdrawal, a hint of disappointment, and you were already adjusting yourself to fix it. You rushed to smooth tension. You rushed to repair what wasn't even broken. You were hyper-aware, but you were also hyper-reactive. That ends here. Now you pause. You observe patterns instead of excuses. You measure consistency instead of promises. You listen to actions instead of emotional speeches. And that pause, that's power. Here's the brutal truth you finally accept. Potential means nothing without behavior. Yo, you used to fall in love with who someone could be. You saw their wounds, their childhood pain, their hidden goodness. You built loyalty around their future self, but you were suffering in the present. Unstoppable empaths stop dating potential, stop befriending potential, stop investing in potential. They deal with reality. If someone shows inconsistency, you believe it. If someone shows selfishness, you register it. If someone shows respect, you value it. No more fantasy bonding. Another harsh realization. Some people don't want you powerful. They want you accessible. Accessible means always available, always forgiving, always understanding, always flexible. Powerful means selective, grounded, hard to manipulate. And when you shift from accessible to powerful, the dynamic changes. People who relied on your guilt lose leverage. People who depended on your overthinking lose control. People who fed off your emotional labor feel the distance, but you don't explain it. You don't hold meetings to announce your growth. You don't issue warnings. You adjust access, silently. This is where your fear changes too. You used to fear losing people. Now you fear losing yourself. And that fear of self-betrayal becomes your internal alarm system. The moment you start shrinking to keep someone comfortable, it goes off. The moment you start over-giving to secure connection, it alerts. You stop negotiating with that voice. You trust it. The power shift also changes how you handle conflict. You don't explode. You don't collapse. You don't over-explain. You state what's acceptable. You state what's not. And if it's ignored, you adjust your presence accordingly. No drama. No revenge. Just consequence. That's what makes you unstoppable. You are no longer emotionally chaotic. You are emotionally disciplined. You don't suppress your depth. You direct it. You don't avoid connection. You filter it. And the biggest transformation, either you stop trying to win people over. You let them reveal themselves. Because you finally understand something unshakable. Your energy is valuable. Your time is limited. And access to you is earned, not assumed. This is it. Not the soft awakening. Not the healing phase. Not the I'm working on myself. Not the I'm working on myself chapter. This is the stage where you decide. Unstoppable is not a mood. It's a standard. You don't wake up one day fearless. You wake up tired of betraying yourself. Tired of explaining boundaries to people who benefit from you having none. Tired of shrinking so others can feel taller. And here's the truth you can't ignore anymore. If you are still exhausted, it's because you are still overavailable. Let that hit. No one is forcing you to overextend. No one is tying you to draining conversations. No one is making you say yes when your body screams no. You are participating in your own depletion. And here's the final challenge. Look at your life honestly. Where are you still tolerating half effort? Where are you still afraid to disappoint someone? Where are you still confusing guilt with love? Cut it off. Strategically, because unstoppable doesn't mean heartless. It means disciplined. It means your empathy is now guided by standards, not insecurity. It means your kindness has conditions. It means access to you is earned. This is the final stage. You either step into it, or you keep replaying the same exhausting cycles and calling it fate. No one is coming to enforce your boundaries for you. No one is coming to protect your energy for you. No one is coming to choose you for you. That's your job. So make the decision. Will you continue being T, the emotionally drained version of yourself that everyone is comfortable with? Or will you become the version that respects their own limits so fiercely that manipulation no longer works, guilt no longer hooks, and inconsistency no longer tempts? Choose. Because once you truly decide to stop abandoning yourself, you don't become cold. You don't become distant. You become unstoppable.